Daf Yomi Tractate Chullin, page 36a, top of the page, with the words Sol Kedai Techamino. Sol Kedai Techamino. It could enter your mind. Excuse me just one moment. I'm going to turn this over. Okay. It could enter your mind to say, since benefit from disqualified consecrated animals is forbidden with regard to their fleece and labor, perhaps benefit from their blood is also forbidden, and let it require burial. Therefore, the verse teaches us that benefit from their blood is permitted. The school of Rabbi Yishmael taught in the verse that the verse and drinks the blood of carcasses, from which it is derived that the blood of an animal that was killed, rendered food items susceptible to ritual impurity, serves to exclude blood that emerges in a surge due to arterial pressure at the moment of slaughter while the animal is still alive, that does not render seeds susceptible to ritual impurity. Tanu Rabbanan, Hashochet v'hitis dam al hadalas, Rabbi Omer, Huchshal, Rabbi Chia Omer, Tolin. The sages taught in Praita with regard to one who slaughters an animal and splashed blood of the slaughter on a gourd of truma. Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi says the gourd is rendered susceptible to ritual impurity. Rabbi Chia says if the gourd came into contact with a source of impurity, one places the matter in abeyance, as there is uncertainty whether the blood rendered it susceptible to impurity. Amar Rabbi Yehoshua. Some say Rabbi Oshaya. Okay? Amar Rabbi Oshaya or Amar Rabbi Yehoshua. Mi'achar sheRabbi Omer huchshar Rabbi Chia amar tolin. Anu al mi nismoch v'u nismoch al livrei Rabbi Shimon. Shaya Rabbi Shimon Omer shchita machsheres v'lo adam. Rabbi Oshaya said, since Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi says that the gourd is rendered susceptible to ritual impurity, and Rabbi Chia says that one places the matter in abeyance, on whom shall we rely? Come and let us rely on the statement of Rabbi Shimon. As Rabbi Shimon would say, it is slaughter that renders the animal susceptible, and not blood. Amar Papa kon moedim mechadis ledam matchila b'ad sof. Kulial melopligi nemachshir ki pligi benit kaneach. Hadam ben siman la siman. Rabbi savar yeshna lishchita mitchila b'ad sof. Hadam shchitachu. Rav Papa said in explanation, everyone, Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, Rabbi Chia, agrees that where there is blood on the gourd throughout the slaughter continuously from beginning to end, everyone, both Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, who says slaughter is defined only as the conclusion of its performance, and Rabbi Yochanan, who says slaughter is defined from the beginning to the end of its performance, agrees that the blood renders the gourd susceptible to impurity in accordance with the opinion of the rabbis who disagree with Rabbi Shimon. When they disagree is in a case where the blood is wiped off the gourd. Between the cutting of one simon and the other simon, Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi holds that slaughter is defined from the beginning to the end of its performance, and this blood that's splashed on the gourd is blood of slaughter. Rabbi Chia sovareinu l'shchita basov b'haydam makehu u'may toilin ad gama shchita. Rabbi Chia holds that slaughter is defined only as the conclusion of its performance, and this is blood of a wound, which does not render food items susceptible to ritual impurity. And what is the meaning of the ruling of Rabbi Chia that one places the matter in abeyance? It means that one places the matter in abeyance until the conclusion of the slaughter. If there is blood remaining on the gourd at the conclusion of the slaughter, the blood renders the gourd susceptible to ritual impurity, and if not, the blood does not render the gourd susceptible to ritual impurity. Umay ba'u v'nismoch al divrei Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon lo machshir, Rabbi Chia machshir. The Gemara asks, and what is the meaning of the statement of Rabbi Yehoshua? Come and let us rely on the statement of Rabbi Shimon. According to Rabbi Shimon, the blood of slaughter does not render food items susceptible to ritual impurity, while according to Rabbi Chia, the blood of slaughter renders the gourd susceptible to ritual impurity. V'nitkaneach mihu hashavo le'adadi, ma lo machshir, u'ma lo machshir havelei Rabbi Chad, ve'ein divarov shel echad b'mukom shnayim. The Gemara answers that in a case where the blood is wiped off the gourd prior to the conclusion of slaughter, in any event, the opinions of Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Chia correspond to each other. One sage holds that the blood of slaughter does not render the gourd susceptible to ritual impurity, and the other sage holds that the blood of slaughter does not render the gourd susceptible to ritual impurity. The result is Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, who holds that the blood of slaughter renders the gourd susceptible to ritual impurity, is one sage stating an individual opinion, and the statement of one sage has no standing in a place where it is disputed by two sages. Rav Ashi Amar Tolin Le'oilam Mashma V'nitkaneach L'Rabbi Chia Sapoke Nisapkale Yesh L'Shchita Mitchila V'Yatzov O Elo L'Shchita Ela Basov Umay Tolin Lo Ochlim Lo Sofin. Rav Ashi said that the term one places the matter in abeyance indicates that it remains in abeyance forever. It is a fundamental halakhic uncertainty for which there is no resolution. And in the case where the blood is wiped off the gourd prior to the conclusion of the slaughter, the halakha is unclear. This is because Rabbi Chia is uncertain whether slaughter is defined from the beginning to the end of its performance, or whether slaughter is defined only as the conclusion of its performance. And what is the meaning of his ruling that one places the matter in abeyance? It means that if a source of impurity comes into contact with the gourd after the blood was wiped off the gourd, one may neither eat the gourd, as perhaps it is impure truma, nor may one burn it, as perhaps it is pure. Umay ba'u v'nismoch al divrei Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon l'machshir, Rabbi Chia sapeka le'inyan trefa mihu shavu le'adadi umar, or in brackets it says ulemar lo sarfinan, umar in brackets ulemar lo sarfinan. The Gemara asks, and according to this explanation, what is the meaning of the statement of Rabbi Yehoshua? Come and let us rely on the statement of Rabbi Shimon. According to Rabbi Shimon, the blood of slaughter does not render food items susceptible to ritual impurity, while according to Rabbi Chia, there is uncertainty with regard to the status of the gourd. The Gemara answers that with regard to the matter of burning, in any event, the opinions of Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Chia correspond to each other. One sage, Rabbi Shimon, does not burn the gourd because it was not rendered susceptible to impurity, and the other sage, Rabbi Chia, does not burn the gourd due to the uncertainty. Havelei Rabbi Chad, ve'in devar shelacha b'mkom shnayim, v'achik kegon zot toilin v'lo ochlin v'lo salfin. The result is that Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, who holds that one burns the gourd since the blood of slaughter renders the gourd susceptible to ritual impurity, in contact with a source of impurity renders it impure, is one sage stating an individual opinion, and the statement of one sage has no standing in a place where it is disputed by two sages. And this is what Rabbi Chia is saying. In a case such as this, one places the matter in abeyance. One may neither eat the gourd nor burn it. Okay. Boi Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish Tzorid shel minochois moinin barishon v'sheni, o ein moinin barishon v'sheni, כי מהניה חיבס הקודש לבסולי בגופי למין הבא, ראשון ושני לא, אוי דילמה, לא ישנה. Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish raises a dilemma with regard to a dry portion of consecrated flour that was not mixed with the oil of meal offerings. Does one count the descending levels of impurity characteristic of other foods that come into contact with the primary source of impurity, meaning that food assumes first degree impurity, and food that comes into contact with that food assumes second degree impurity? Or does one not count the descending levels of first degree impurity and second degree impurity? The Gemara elaborates, when regard to sanctity, for sanctity is effective in rendering an item susceptible to impurity, is it effective only to disqualify that item itself, but to count the descending levels of first degree and second degree impurity is not effective? Or perhaps one is rendered susceptible to impurity, there is no difference whether it is rendered susceptible by means of regard for sanctity or by means of contact with liquids. Amar Rabbi Lazar tashima mikol oichel sheri ochel v'goyim ochel haba b'mayim uchshar oichel she'eno ba b'mayim lo uchshar. Rabbi Lazar said, come in here, a proof from a Braita. It is written, all of food that may be eaten on which water comes, it shall be impure, and all drink that may be drunk, it shall be impure. Leviticus 11:34. From that verse it is derived, food that comes into contact with water is rendered susceptible to ritual impurity, and to count the descending levels of impurity, but food that does not come into contact with water is not rendered susceptible to ritual impurity. Apparently, for the dry portion of flour that did not come into contact with liquid, but was rendered susceptible by regard for sanctity, one does not count the descending levels of impurity. Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish the Gemara asks, is that to say that Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish does not have knowledge of the halacha that only food that comes into contact with water is susceptible to ritual impurity? The Gemara answers, this is the dilemma that Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish is raising. Is the halachic status of consecrated food that is subject to regard for sanctity like that of food that comes into contact with water, as one does not count the descending levels of impurity for items that come into contact with it, or no, its halachic status is unique? Rabbi Lazar nami mitorei karoi kama mechdei ksiv chi yutan ma'im al zera mikoro echel sheyochel amali. The Gemara explains that Rabbi Lazar, who cited the verse to resolve the dilemma of Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, is not merely citing the verse that Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish knows, rather he too is stating his proof from the extraneous formulation of the verses, since it is written, but when water is placed upon the seed, and any of their carcass falls upon it, it is impure for you. Leviticus 11:38. Why do I need the verse of all food which may be eaten, on which water comes, shall be impure? Leviticus 11:34. Stop here and continue on 36b.